Hi, this is Jim Cunningham, and we're going to talk about all things family office. Who is it for and what isn't for? Enjoy. Hi, this is Jim Cunningham, and we're going to talk about a family office. Why high net worth families use family offices? What's going on here? What are they doing that maybe you should be doing? If your family owns or controls assets over $10 million, or you have income over $1 million, or you're a business owner, you might want to consider joining a family office. And here's why. This is a very specialized bundle of services that is highly customized for each client and focuses on long-term and short-term planning, but very long-term planning to manage and preserve your wealth through the generations. And these are typically multi-year engagements with families. I'm a partner at Cunningham Legal. I've got over 25 years experience. We have offices throughout the state of California. We do have clients in other states. I'm a certified specialist in estate planning, trust, and probate law, a real estate broker, and securities and insurance licensed, and a pilot. These are the other lawyers in our firm, and many of these lawyers do work in our family office services. And if you're watching this and you might recognize some of these people, yeah, I know that person. I'm working with him or her. Now, this is a disclaimer. I'm a lawyer. I'm going to go through a lot of stuff. This is not a substitute for legal advice. So don't watch this and go out and say, oh, I'm going to, do all this stuff online and transfer all my properties, and really not a good idea. That can have a very bad outcome. So really, this is kind of for information only. Let's start. What is a family office? So what do we have going on here? Well, a family office is an engine that gets important stuff done. You can think of a family office, and we have a funny cartoon here with a cowboy trying to herd cats. And the cat says, I tried to organize a stampede, but everyone has their own agenda. So I will tell you, I'm a professional. I work with other professionals when we work with clients, and it really is nice to have a leader. There needs to be a leader. And many times it's the client. And so if you have a CPA and a lawyer and a financial advisor, and maybe you're, got some property managers or, whatever it is, that you're the one that's got to coordinate everything. And a lot of people, they just say, you know what, this is way too much for me to be handling. I know I maybe need a little bit more help on an ongoing basis versus sort of an ad hoc or a one-off basis. And really, the nice thing about a family office is other people, right, are holding these people accountable, not necessarily you. Now, you may be the kind of person who says, well, I want to hold all these people accountable, but a lot of people, they just kind of get exhausted. We give in our family office, our focus is on tax mitigation. We meet quarterly and annually. The reason we have to meet quarterly if you're a California resident or have California source income is these tax strategies are quarter by quarter. They're not year by year. So federal tax strategies are typically year by year. California requires a little bit more focus and attention. We give objective financial counsel. People come to us and they say, is this a good deal? Should I be doing this? Jim, take a look at this. I've got these three choices. Can you run through this with me? What should I be doing? We're not giving financial planning or financial services in our firm, but we do give you counsel about what those are. And with my background in real estate and securities, I've got a pretty broad background. Estate planning, obviously that's a very important part of it. Many of our clients, their estate plans need continual monitoring because as you'll see, they can be very complex. And then philanthropic foundation and compliance. Many of our clients are philanthropically inclined, and they can manage their charitable giving in an extremely tax efficient manner beyond just, donating to your church or synagogue, here's $1,000, whatever it is. There are more advanced or more complex structures that you can use to really leverage your giving that frankly, many advisors, I don't know if they don't know, but many times they're like, it's too hard. I don't want to deal with it, but that's not us. So we're on it, right? Ongoing risk management. This is really important because one of the basic functions of a lawyer in planning is to see risk, to walk through the client through it, and then, determine, does it make sense to mitigate this risk or not? And then we also serve as agent for service of process in California. So if you have an LLC or a corporation or a partnership that's registered with California, you can use us as your agent for service of process. So what our family office is not. Our family office does not provide investment advice. We don't provide trustee services, so we don't serve as a fiduciary. Some firms do both of these. Ours just happens not to. We do not provide lifestyle management. So this is, managing your household staff, making travel arrangements. A relative of mine has actually a single family office, and they handle all of their personal matters. They plan parties. That's just not us. And management of personal use assets like a home or vacation home, we're just not doing. So if you got a place up in Tahoe, or maybe a beach house in San Diego, and you say, hey, I want my family office to make sure there's food there, that's not the service we offer. You can get that service, but that's just not what we choose to offer. We're focused more on the tax, and you'll see the kind of person that's typically a family office client of ours. So Eric asks a great question. Does family office provide instant A-team, or do you still have to piece them together? Well, Eric, we're respectful of people's existing relationships, and sometimes we do work with advisors, but what we find is we do have an instant A-team. So if you come to us and you say, look, I know I need a new lawyer, financial advisor, and CPA, we've got a team that's ready to go. They've got bandwidth, they've got the ability to do it. So Eric, if that's something you're interested in, please reach out to us, and we can get going on that, because that is one thing I'll tell you. Very frustrating, right? You have to kind of coordinate all these professionals, hence the herding of the cats. Well, who is a family office for? Who is it for? I'm going to just tell a story, just kind of empty your mind. I'm going to talk about Hank and Wendy. So Hank and Wendy are like many of our clients, and Hank and Wendy are in their 50s. They live what I would call a normal life, except they become very wealthy. And this is very common, right? Hank and Wendy, they start with nothing, and now they live in a $10 million home. And for those of you who do not live in areas where there are $10 million homes, you might think of a $10 million home as being this great, huge, whatever it is. Oftentimes a $10 million home is kind of a normal house, but just in a really nice area. So maybe that's kind of Hank and Wendy. They do have $50 million in liquid investments, and annual income of $10 million. They've got 2 daughters in college, and they're still normal people. Wendy, in fact, is still frugal. So this is a really common trait we see with many of our family office clients. Many people, they might have started with nothing. They might have inherited a lot of wealth. And one thing is, if you have inherited a lot of wealth and you still have it, your cousin might have blown through it, or your brother might have blown through it. And so many times people who inherit wealth sometimes are the most frugal clients. And that's not a bad thing. That's just kind of how you're wired, and that's who you are. And in our example here, Hank founded 2 companies, and one makes a ton of money and the other one's, just loses money. But he likes the one that loses money, even though, it doesn't make economic sense. But because it's for Hank, it's not solely about the money, right? It's what kind of life do I want to live? And he's got the freedom to choose that. Hank and Wendy, they still shop at Trader Joe's. They go to Nordstrom, they go to In-N-Out. Maybe Hank and Wendy, that's where they went on their first date when they didn't have anything. And so they still do things that people, and for those of you who don't have a lot of money, you might think that these people live a different way. But the reality is, many people that you see walking on the street or driving in their, in their Prius or their Tesla are people like this. They lead a normal life. They just happen to have a lot of money, and you'll see the complexity that can come with that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Hank travels in first class because he thinks, hey, that's, I'm a man in my 50s and I've got enough money, but he's still kind of irked by paying the price. Hank might negotiate at a swap meet a $5 purchase, but then turn around and tip a waitress $100. So it's just, what sort of drives Hank. Hank kind of feels he's lost touch with the meaning of money. In the sense that most people have it because there's so many zeros attached to it, but Wanda hasn't. And this is really common, where one spouse might have a view on money and the other spouse does not necessarily correlate with the view of that one spouse. But, they're not lacking for anything. They don't want to spoil their kids, right? They're not in it. They want to pass on their values, not just their wealth, to their children. So these are 2 very important things. And this is a common thread that we see with our clients in our firm, our family office clients, is they don't want to raise kind of spoiled brats, and they want to raise people who are respectful and normal people. It's how I've got 3 kids. It's how I want them raised. And so these are the type of people that become family office clients of our firm. But, they kind of intuitively know they should be doing something more, something different. They don't want to live this life of luxury in some, crazy expensive life. They do know something's missing. And so they've talked to their advisors, but, it's just not syncing. It's just not coming together. And what they're looking for is kind of a project manager for their financial life, if you will. So the tax life. And we'll talk about the complexity that can come with an estate of this size. They don't know their next steps. And so poof, they watch this webinar. They're like, oh, that's us. Yeah, we'll call Cunningham Legal. And because a family office at Cunningham Legal may be right for them, it might not. And I will tell you, the clients who are family office clients get in my own personal head. I'm thinking about their stuff. I might be washing dishes or something, and I'm thinking about a client, well, the Joneses, they could be doing this with their stuff. So what you've got is you've got me and a lot of other lawyers and other professionals in our firm and CPAs and financial advisors and other professionals thinking about you. If you're a family office client, we're mindful of you. We're thinking about it. We're proactive. And I think that's what a lot of people want. Not everyone, but a lot of people want it. So, something to understand. And one of the things people ask is cost. And I'm not offended when people ask cost, because a lot of times that's the only thing people know to ask. Hey, you need a whiz bang. You're like, well, what's a whiz bang and how much is it? Right? That's sometimes the only question people know to ask. But this is not without a cost, and it is a custom type of engagement. I would say primarily these are hourly engagements, so it's a retainer and a year-long engagement, and we work through, and I'll kind of walk through the mechanics of what a year-long engagement looks like. But our family office, like Hank and Wendy, again, they're typically people who are 10 million in assets is kind of the minimum, and or $1 million in personal income, and sometimes a business owner. And especially if you're a business owner, maybe you have a business that you're going to sell for 10 million. If you don't do it right, half that can end up going in taxes, one half if it's in California. So if you think you got a business worth 10 million, remember, many times when you sell that, you're going to lose a big chunk in taxes. And that's one thing that we do with clients is we help them, typically with another advisor to maximize value and get the highest price. That's a multi-year engagement to tee up the business in a way to mitigate taxes. We got a lot of content on our YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe, click the bell, and it'll ding you, it'll ping you when we post new content, which we do every week or so. Our family office does not provide investment advice, service trustee, and so some family offices do, ours don't. So why a family office? Well, many of our clients have a fairly complex financial structure, or they kind of know intuitively that what they have isn't enough, like Hank and Wendy, and they need a little bit more. And this is where you get into the LLCs, partnerships, corporations, trusts. All these have to work together, and they do require care and feeding. So if you're a real estate investor, business owner, or if you have passive investments in a closely held business, that can tend to skew your estate slightly more complex. If you have multi-generational wealth, if you've inherited property, that can in itself be a complex structure, generation skipping trust, also known as a dynasty trust. It's hard to take care of business, so to speak, because there's so many pieces, and all these pieces have to fit together annually. You need to pay attention to taxes. Do I spend money out of this bucket? Do I spend money out of that bucket? Do I move assets between buckets? These are all things that you bring your advisors together, and we work through. And again, a lot of people don't know what they have, quite frankly. They come in, they say, well, I have this. And then we peel the onion and we say, well, you don't really have this, you have that. And that really changes things. So a lot of people just don't really understand. So this family office coordinates the efforts of the A team, and the guy in the middle, the old guy in the middle, it's been said, there has to be an old guy in the room or an old gal in the room sometimes if there's a lot of money moving around or a lot at stake. That's kind of the lawyer, if you will, in the room. I guess it's maybe going to be me someday, hopefully. But this is really important. I think it's important for the lawyers to lead it, because the lawyers, they make sure whatever it happens to be, they make sure it gets done. And I would say that professional advisors frequently do drop the ball. And this is not, I am not criticizing advisors. It is just a reality. And then there's, if you're onesie twosie with people, there's really no accountability among the advisors. So the lawyer might prompt the financial advisor and the CPA in November, like, hey, we need a meeting because the client, Hank and Wendy, we know that they're going to have this $2 million tax bill. What can we do to mitigate that tax bill? And that may happen in the background, right? Certainly at the client's direction, but that's an example of your A team working together. You might be on, vacation in Mexico or something. I don't know, but your A team is on it, making sure that things happen in the background. And typically when the lawyer shows up to the party, stuff gets done, right? I would say that lawyers and financial advisors oftentimes are on it. And I will tell you, the CPAs as a profession have really had this extra burden through COVID. And I'm not blaming CPAs, but the amount of work CPAs have to do and what the government really put the work on CPAs, it helps to have help. Like if you're a CPA watching this, you go, yeah, Jim gets it. The government, the PPP, the EIDL, all these things that were extra that CPAs had to do, frankly, is hard. And also, not a whole lot of people when they come out of college are going into tax prep or accountancy. It's just kind of it's hard to get those people into the profession for whatever reason. So and then on the law firm side, many times the lawyers, let me just tell you something. Lawyers are 100% personally liable for everything bad that happens in a legal engagement. Okay. That's just the nature of it. So lawyers are very cautious. They say, all right, you want help on this matter? We're going to have a separate engagement agreement, and this is what we're going to do. The nice thing about a family office is it kind of predefines what we're going to be doing, and we're not having to do a series of one-offs. So it's significantly more efficient. If a client emails me on a matter, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to be remembering that I worked on it a couple months ago, and I can answer that question. In fact, just before the webinar today, I was answering a question. So it's important to have that ongoing relationship. I think it's a more efficient structure. Taxes, most people want to pay the least taxes while securing legacy for their family and loved ones. And we're here, our job is here to craft a plan to give you options and make recommendations to lower your overall tax bill. And this leads to more wealth for yourself, your family, and your loved ones. This is part of the family office. I think this is probably one of the biggest value propositions, apart from just managing the structures, if you will, and helping the clients understand what all that means. The tax is where you can really add up the numbers and say, look, if I didn't even have this family office, I'd be paying another $500,000 a year in taxes, or 200 or whatever it is. But with it, significantly reducing that tax bill. That being said, and I was on the phone this morning with a CPA who said, this lawyer is making a 9-course meal out of a ham sandwich. Okay. You have to balance value versus complexity when creating structures. It's been said that I think it was I can't remember who the philosopher was. He says, I would have written a shorter letter if I had enough time. And you can see sometimes people, when they go from point A to point B, they just make it really complex. So it's our job as the A team to have a prioritization framework that allows your A team, which is typically your lawyer, CPA, financial advisor, to evaluate each initiative. And then there's a balance between the value, which is the savings, and the cost, which is the fees, and complexity, which is your headspace. Like, okay, I know I can save $100,000 in taxes if I do this, but then you really do need to think to yourself, is it worth the price of admission? How much juice do I want to squeeze out of the orange? And then these initiatives are curated by the A team. So we're going through and editing, and we meet with lots of different types of people who have different, frankly, service offerings or tax saving strategies. And we curate that and bring what makes sense to the client. And really, this is an ongoing puzzle on this balance of value versus complexity. We'll take a question. Anita says, when wanting our A team, who instigates for a meeting? Typically, I'll answer that. We'll talk about the schedule, and we'll talk about in a few slides how it works and how the meetings are scheduled. Well, who needs a family office? Again, it's going to be people, if your net worth is greater than 10 million or taxable income over $1 million, and you want to minimize taxes and unnecessary complexity, then a family office may be for you. Are your advisors working in a coordinated manner? Is your A team working the coordinated manner? Are they on the ball throughout the year? And do you feel like you need someone to herd the cats? That's typically the lawyer's job, to make sure that stuff gets done when it should be done. You can save taxes and create greater wealth when your advisors work in a coordinated manner. And I would say so coordinated that everyone has their cell phone number. And if they don't, that's kind of a sign that they're not working as tightly as they should. So I should be able to text your CPA or your financial advisor and say, hey, what about this? Let's talk about it. Let's have a quick call or Zoom or whatever it is. So how does Cunningham Legal's family office work? How do we work? What is the process? All of our work throughout the year leads to an annual family summit. And this is a meeting that happens, and it's typically a 2 to 4 hour meeting. It's really kind of as long as it needs to be. And and lots of prep goes into this, lots of work beforehand. And we ensure synergy between all of your advisors. So we make sure and look at the issues. And this typically happens kind of in the third quarter, late summer, early fall. And it consists of your legal tax planning team, and that's typically a partner, associate attorney, and administrative assistant. So it's a lot of people, but there's a lot of work that happens when we have this summit. All these things need to get done. And we're dedicated to making sure whatever your it is, gets done, and to protect your legal and financial interests. So a variety of services, tax planning, that's where we're focused on minimizing taxes. Are there tax credits? Are there tax deferral strategies? Are there tax deduction strategies? That's something we really focus on. Financial planning. Last year, 2020, was a really terrible year. A lot of for the markets, right? That sort of 60-40 portfolio got really hammered hard. Many of our clients did some tax planning and some loss harvesting, and that kind of dovetails in with your financial planning and your financial advisor. Legacy planning, many of these, as you'll see in a few slides, many of these structures are appropriately complex, but complex, and they need care and feeding. And so this would involve wills and trusts and other vehicles for generating multi-generational wealth. And the family office oversees that structure and keeps it up to date, because it does change over time. Assets change, people change, that sort of a thing. Business planning, business succession planning. We're working on a matter right now with a client to rework the business succession plan. Many times, as you know, if you're a business owner, if you're getting a loan, if you're doing something, many times they say, look, if you get hit by an ice cream truck, who's going to repay this loan? So this is oftentimes a necessary element for business planning. Charitable planning strategies. Again, many of our clients are very charitably inclined. They like to support people or causes or the environment, wherever your heart sort of leads you on that. And we kind of work with you on maximizing the really overall benefits, tax, charitable benefits, whatever it is. Education and financial governance. We help the client create a mission statement, which is more tactical. A mission statement is, okay, what do we want to do over the next 5 years? A purpose statement is, why are we a family? Like, what is the whole point of this? That's something that really doesn't change over time, and we help clients with that. And then we have a repository, a centralized, secure digital repository for all of your documents and your data, so that's accessible by all the advisors and clients, so it's in one spot. So what's a timeline? Well, new family office clients typically sign up in the first quarter of the year to begin the annual cycle. It can be as late as spring, but as you'll see as we go through this, if it gets much later, the utility of it starts to diminish. Again, some planning strategies have to be implemented in the first quarter to maximize California income tax deductions. And then we can provide significant services in advance. The formal cycle kicks off March 1. And in the second quarter, we're collecting and organizing your data. And then the summit occurs in August, September, or October. Josh asks, what is the security document repository technology? Does it utilize two-factor authentication? Joshua, yes. I don't know the name of it because I'm not on that technical side. We have a whole technical team that handles that, and that's something we could certainly work with you on. But yes, this is super secure. We internally, I'm glad you raised that. Internally, we use two-factor authentication to access any client data in our law firm. So that's just a non-starter for us. We don't keep any paper files in our office. We don't keep client records in our office. All of that is secure on a server. I think it's somewhere in Las Vegas, and there's a guy with a machine gun guarding it. That's what I've heard. I've not been there. What materials are there in our family office practice? So a family office meeting, I should say, a high level agenda. So what this is this is where we're going with it. The family mission statement or family purpose statement or both. And we help you write that and update it so you can really be clear. And the purpose of a mission statement is to be clear to your advisors. I want to rank taxes. I want to minimize taxes over complexity, meaning I'm willing to tolerate a more complex structure to minimize taxes. Or somebody might say, look, I don't want the complexity and I'm willing to pay more taxes. So that's part of that. It's a little tactical, but it's part of it to give guidance to the other advisors. And it's a report, and it usually runs 30 to 40 pages. Sometimes it's longer, rarely is it shorter, and it details all the entities, including LLCs, corporations, partnerships, joint ventures. Many of our clients are general partners in VC funds, and that's something that needs to go on there, and you need to pay attention to it. And the fact that it's there because it's something that we need to incorporate into the overall tax plan. And an up-to-date comprehensive net worth statement. Sometimes, if you have shares of non-publicly traded entities, those can be kind of difficult, and there's a little bit of a reluctance sometimes to attach a number to it. So we certainly do that consistent with the client's concerns about things. And then an up-to-date estate plan and corporate structure diagram. I think this is one of the most important things. It's a diagram that shows you, I've got all the, how do all these pieces fit together, right? And it's a diagram, and you can look at it and you go, now I understand. So clients really like the diagram. Advisors love the diagram too, because it's complex stuff. Eric asks, do you generally meet at a minimum annually, or is it always quarterly due to state tax issues? Eric, I would say that if state tax issues are an issue, meaning, and the rule is if you go over $1 million in income in California in a given quarter, you need to pay more estimated taxes. If that's something that's happening, depending on the size of the numbers, it's going to be quarterly. It just will. Many of our clients, I talk to them every week, right? It's like we're really active. Other clients, not so active. It just it depends on the nature of the engagement. So if you have significant real estate holdings, consider a family office. Let's look at a case study. This is a real estate and creating a plan to preserve wealth. Hal and Wanda are in their 60s, and they have 3 fully functioning adult children, so there's no problem with the children. They have a $40 million real estate portfolio, $2 million home, $5 million beach house, and an $8 million stock portfolio. Now, Hal and his daughter work full-time managing the real estate portfolio, but Wanda really wants Hal to work less and spend more time with her and the grandkids at the beach house. But Hal's busy, doing stuff on the real estate portfolio. The sons are completely uninterested in helping Hal in any way, and Wanda with the family business. They're just not interested. So Hal and Wanda, they're like, yeah, we know we need to do something. And a date that's very important is 2026, because in 2026, right now in 2023, if you're watching this, we're in 2023, it is $12,920,000 that each person can leave to, another person. Now, if you're a non-resident alien, that number is significantly lower, but it's $12,920,000 per person. So if you're married, you double that. So it's almost $25 million, $26 million. Now, remember, they have a fairly large estate. So in 2023, they've got a $32 million estate. That's a $2.5 million death tax bill. In 2033, and I'm making some assumptions here, 4% growth on the real estate. Maybe they're living off their portfolio, and I actually did model the math here. I'm not just guessing. That $32 million estate is now a $45 million estate, $10.5 million tax bill. But in 2043, just project out to their life expectancy, Hal and Wanda have a $65 million estate and a $15 million death tax bill. Let me tell you how I got there. I assumed 4% return on the real estate, and them kind of using their liquid assets to live on. And that death tax exemption, that $12,920,000 exemption that gets cut in half in 2026 is indexed for inflation. All right, so that's something to know. It is indexed for inflation. Now, something that Hal and Wanda can do, they can zero out their tax bill, because right now you can give 26 million tax-free, but it gets even better. If you have real estate, you can use discounts for lack of marketability and control if you do it right. And I'm not going to walk through the structure on this, but this is a very common structure that we see with our clients. And this zeroes out the death tax. And I'm using some numbers and some assumptions, but I did the math on this. This type of structure, this is not any easy structure to live with. I'm just going to give you a heads up. There's a lot of care and feeding that goes with this. This is not a do-it-yourself project. You need to attach yourself with a law firm, A team, whatever it is. You need to get and keep your A team, really think family office on this, but this is a perfect family office candidate, because if you don't follow the rules, the IRS is going to ignore this plan. So it's very important. There are a lot of gotchas in the Internal Revenue Code, but if you don't follow the rules, it's not going to work. Now let's look at a family office with mostly stocks and bonds, not real estate, but stocks and bonds. Hal and Wanda are in their 60s. They've got three fully functioning adults, a $30 million stock portfolio, and a $2 million house. And they agree it's time to get their affairs in order. Now, you'll see that this is a slightly less complicated plan, right? So we've got a family LLC, maybe some rolling grats. We have some materials on this in our YouTube page. I would suggest you check that out. A CUPERT for the home and a living trust. And again, so this is, I would say this is a fairly less complicated structure, even though this looks still complicated. This also zeroes out the death tax. And again, this requires care and feeding. It is not a do-it-yourself project. You need to get your A-team. You need to find your A-team, keep your A-team throughout the duration of this. This is the price of entry. This is the care and feeding. There's a cost associated with this. But when you look at it zeroing out a $15 million tax bill, it is definitely worth the price of admission. This is how wealthy people avoid taxes, frankly. I mean, given enough time and given the right advisors, many, if not most estates can zero out the death tax. That brings us to the end. We have offices in Northern and Southern California. And when you call our office, if you call in, so you can certainly self-schedule online, but if you do call in, it's very important to understand you're not going to be talking to a lawyer. You're going to be talking with one of our client specialists. And let us know you want to update or create an estate plan. Let us know you're interested in the family office. You want to have a conversation. Also, let us know if someone's passed away. That's very important. And tell us your estate and tax planning goals. You say, hey, I saw the family office video. It's something I want to do. Don't ask for pricing. Only attorneys can quote legal fees. And really don't ask for legal advice because the client specialists are not lawyers. And the goal of the call is to set an appointment with an attorney. It might be a 15-minute call. It might be a longer meeting, and they can kind of walk you through the difference on that when you call in. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's really easy. You just, if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, and then also click the bell, and then you'll be alerted when we post new content. And if you enjoy our webinars, please review us on Google. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the Q&A. And next week is Stung by 2022. I know I was. And if you're watching this, you probably were too. You need to get your 2023 financial act together. So we'll have Christina Lindsay Orta of Ascent Wealth Management joining us, and we will be covering some things you can do to get your financial house in order. That's a QR code. If you have your smartphone, obviously, you can get that out, and it takes you to a link to register for the webinar. Without any, looks like there are no other questions. If you're watching this on YouTube, please stay on because we're going to roll to another webinar, and enjoy watching.